Hello everybody and welcome to Live Love Lang. This is the Gladly Global YouTube channel where we teach you how to learn multiple languages and how to go abroad. So today I was thinking about speaking freely about me learning Mandarin. My techniques to learn Mandarin that I developed in these months of quarantine because I started studying seriously just recently. And if you don't know, I am fluent in Japanese. I've been studying Japanese for 7 years. I have a bachelor degree in Japanese language and culture, and I've been working in Japan the past 3 years in a Japanese company. So I've had time to practice and get used to Japanese and Japanese characters very much. So I was like, I know already Japanese. I want to learn Mandarin. How can I do this smartly? Is that even a word? How can I do this efficiently? In these months, I came up with some ideas that are still developing, so I'm still trying to understand what works best for me. But I thought about sharing it because I think maybe other people will be in the same situation as me. I don't know. So here they are. First of all, I am a textbook girl, and I don't know why, but I prefer having something made of paper in front of me when I study and take notes from that. So that's what I think is the best way for me. But maybe you prefer studying, watching TV series or listening to songs and analyzing the vocabulary or the grammar that you find in those medias, and that's completely fine. But at the same time, my way of learning is very visual. I think you saw a video in the past of me talking about visual learning, and it's here as well. So for me, it's way easier to remember a word or a sentence or grammar if I have written it before, if I have seen it before, because I need to have the image in my mind of the spelling or the character, whatever it is. I think that's what visual learning is about. When I have this vocabulary and grammar knowledge inside my head, I can start composing sentences, etc. And it's easier for me when watching a TV series or listen to a song or whatever to catch the words. So it only made sense for me to start from characters to learn Chinese. And I bought this book in Japan. It's called Ichiban Hajime Chugokugo Tango, and it's just words and words. What is good about this book is that it gives you the translation in Japanese. You can see the word wo is translated with watashi, boku, ore. It's just easier when you get to the words that are composed by two characters. Sometimes they are the same characters but read in a different manner. Sometimes it's completely different word made by completely different characters. And it's very interesting to me to make the comparison between the two languages. So I can remember, like, for example, the word Junbi in Japanese is
准备
in Chinese. I remember it because I know that it's very similar to the Japanese version. By contrast, for other words that have completely different character, I would remember that because it's completely different. It's a different word. I don't know. It's just easier for me that way. And I think I did this with English as well. When I was learning English, a lot of words in Italian and English are similar, and I can Englishize Italian words. But at the same time, we have a lot of false friends. So it was just easier for me to remember these words by similarities or by contrast than to just learn them in English, you know? So I'm doing the same thing with Japanese and Mandarin. At the same time, if you don't have a book like this, I would just recommend that you find some kind of source, whatever it is, a song or TV series or a book, whatever you can find on the internet, a blog, whatever. And if you want to translate the characters in Japanese, I noticed that word reference is not too bad for it. First of all, it's not perfect because it translates to English and then to Japanese, but it works very well because you can click on the stuff and find words. It's very like link-based website, and you can listen to the pronunciation of the words. It's just like overall not bad, but I'm sure that if you Google it, you can find hundreds and hundreds of websites that translate from Chinese to Japanese. Other books that I find very useful to learn Mandarin from Japanese are this N1, N2, whatever books for the JLPT, because they are so smart. If you buy this in Japan, they have words and translation and example sentences in English and Chinese, because they just want to do one book for everybody. So this is Japanese and Chinese and English all in once. It's very useful, and one is too advanced for me, but I also have an entry one, and this one has Korean as well. It's amazing. And another book that I use to learn Chinese is this one. I found it at a second-hand shop in Japan. It's called Cracking the Chinese Puzzles. And it's from this person that is from Hong Kong, if I'm not mistaken. And they wrote this book trying to analyze all the characters and explaining what the parts of the character mean, why they became that way. And they often do also comparisons with Japanese, which is very convenient to me since it's language that I know. And I just love it so much. I'm also a nerd of characters, so this book is like it was made for me. So when we're talking about characters per se, as you may or may not know, there are mainly two kinds of Mandarin, and they are simplified version, which is used in the mainland China, and then there's like traditional characters, which are used, for example, in Taiwan. I'm still debating if I should learn one or the other, so I'm just learning both of them at the same time. I think it's very mechanic. Once you know Japanese characters anyways, it's really easy to see if a character is simplified or traditional. Sometimes Japanese characters are already simplified, and sometimes Japanese character will be traditional characters. For example, the word gakse, gaku, that character is already simplified because the same characters are used in simplified Mandarin. But for example, in Taiwan, the same word will be spelled like this. Other times, for example, let's take the character of Hanasu. This character, it's already a traditional character because in simplified Chinese it's gonna be like this. So since my knowledge is already half this way, half that way, I know some traditional characters, some simplified characters, I just decided I'm gonna study both at the same time. And a good tool to do that is Pleco. This is an application for the phone. My friends at university who studied Chinese, everybody used Pleco as a dictionary. It's just Chinese to English dictionary, but it gives you the simplified characters and the traditional version as well of the same word, which means that you can see directly which parts of the character are simplified or traditional, and you can compare it with Japanese to see which version, you know. We're going back at that technique of comparison, understanding by contrast or similarities, which characters you already know, which one you can learn anew, and it's just gonna be easier for you. Now, what everybody wants to know, what about tones? How can you learn tones starting from Japanese? I know, like, do you know that Japanese actually have some kind of tones? I don't remember what they're called. I know that Dogen-san makes some videos about that. I've never studied it. I still cannot remember how to say ame or ame. Ame, ame. You don't have to know this to be able to speak Japanese, but you're very cool if you know it. On the other hand, you have to know tones to be able to speak Mandarin, right? So what I decided to do was to write characters using different colors, and I assigned every color to one of the tones, so I can remember the tone just by looking at the character, because it's very easy for me to remember the spelling, let's say the pinyin of the character, but it's very hard to remember the tone because it's like additional information that I didn't have to learn when I learned Japanese characters.
Try to educate the heart.
Another thing that I was not happy about when learning Chinese was that they use pinyin to transcribe the pronunciation of the characters. And I recently learned, my friends, that there is actually an alphabet similar to hiragana, katakana alphabet, and it's called bopomofo in English, or
注音符号
it's very similar to katakana actually, to the point that it's confusing, but it's very easy to learn. I learned it already, I think, in 1 or 2 days. And you can use it like furigana in Japanese. I love it more because even if you write, for example, to say, for example, the character to eat, chi, right? But it's chi, which in Japanese is chi, and even in English it's chi, in Italian it's chi. So based on the language, the pronunciation of that chi is gonna change, and it's confusing in Chinese for me because I'm still not used to how you pronounce words, right? So it makes sense to me to use a completely different alphabet to write this kind of sounds, so I can assign these pronunciation sounds to that alphabet. So it's going to be a new thing that makes more sense because it's directly related to the Chinese pronunciation, right? It's actually used only in Taiwan, I think, but you can find everything you want to know about it on Wikipedia. It's a very well done article in my opinion, but you don't have to do this. This is just a plus. It's just because when I was learning Japanese, it would help me a lot writing the actually hiragana, like furigana, on top of the characters to remember how to pronounce them. Alright, I think that was all I had to say about my new techniques to learn Chinese, since I'm still trying to understand what works for me. If you have any recommendation, please write a comment down below. And if you're interested in learning Japanese with me as a tutor or other languages, you can book a trial lesson on our website, gladlyglobal.com. I will wait for you. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye bye!